So welcome to my episode on my top 10 console strategy games. Now, I tackled this around 10 years ago now, and I thought it's time for a redo of that video. I have some new additions to my list this time, and I'll ask you guys, what are your favorite strategy console games? Let me know down below. And this video is brought to you by Unicorn Overlord, the great new strategy RPG by Atlas and Vanillaware. Unicorn Overlord is the rebirth of retro fantasy strategy that embarks audiences on a nostalgia-infused epic strategy RPG adventure, inviting them to forge alliances, liberate kingdoms, and explore an expansive world with stunning visuals. It's a classic heroic fantasy tale that pays homage to classic 16 and 32-bit strategy RPG gameplay with gorgeous modern 2D aesthetics for tactics fans that want to test their real-time strategy skills with 40 to 50 hours of gameplay. Unicorn Overlord is releasing digitally on Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X and S, PS5, PS4, and physically for Nintendo Switch, Xbox X, and PS5, and is available for pre-order now and launches March 8th, 2024. A demo version is available now, and your progress carries over to the full game. Click the link down below. Now, this is just my personal list. As I say, how I'm going to tackle the 10 games today is I'm going to start with the earliest ones that I played leading up to the latest ones that I played. It's kind of a journey with my strategy games over the years and discovering them and learning about them and playing different games in the genre over the years and becoming a bit of a strategy fan. Yeah, on consoles. And to start, I do have one honorable mention. And it's a big honorable mention because it's a big series in Japan. A few of them have come over here to varying degrees, but that is the Super Robot Wars strategy games. I played so many of these games on the PlayStation 1. I would just import these games and play through them through Japanese, and I love them. And what they are is a combination of many different animes. So you get robots from many different animes all put together. You can have them on your one team, and you're fighting the alien baddies in the game. But it's so great seeing classic characters and classic mecha fighting it out. It's a mecha strategy game, and so cool to see the old school characters. I had to mention this one, I really did. Now we have to go to the beginning of my journey for strategy games. In 1990, I would go over to my friend Swagger's place. His name was Richard. We called him Swagger in Dungeons & Dragons. That was his name. And he and his brother had a TurboGrafx. I could not believe this. And they had a whole bunch of different games. And the one game that I went over there and played quite a bit was Military Madness. This was an interesting one because it takes place on the moon. You got two rival factions fighting for control of the moon. And it was the first time I saw an overhead grid-based strategy game. I'm like, what is this? You can move little tanks around and you can move your troops around and you fought against a second player? I was like, what is this? Me and my friend Richard would play this religiously. We got so addicted to it. I started to learn how to play it when I got my own copy, which was this one. I got in a value bin in a Radio Shack way back in like 1991. When I originally got it, I would play it religiously, and then me and him went on to have insane battles and try to stalemate each other. And those battles, I swear to God, were going for hours. But loved Military Madness. I learned about strategy games through this one. So in 1990, I was flipping through a video game magazine, and I saw an advertisement for this game, Warsong. And I'm like, what is this? And I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, it's another strategy game, kind of like Military Madness, but it's like got anime characters and it's kind of knights and it's medieval, and I'm like, oh, I'm in. And I was playing this in my later years of high school. I remember sitting up really late at night, doing my strategies, figuring everything out. And this was the first game I played where your main commanders could die and you can't get them back. And I'm like, I was so afraid to lose one. And the one thing that I'll give myself credit for, I got through the whole game right to the end, and I had to sacrifice one commander. And I felt so guilty about it, because what I would usually do is restart the level again and try to go through it and not lose anybody. Man, it was really impossible for me not to lose one guy. And this is kind of like my precursor to like Fire Emblem and the commanders of the troops in there that you could lose them. And I was like, oh my god. And it added so much more to the strategy. And I just love this. I love the character designs at the time and everything. Even though the box art is very Americanized, still very, very cool. And yes, years later, we got Langrisser 1 and 2, so it was called Warsong. When they brought it over here, it's called Langrisser in Japan, and NIS brought this game over here, and they changed the character artists, which I wasn't really a big fan of. Yes, there's reversible covers. I voted for that online back in the day. This is not too bad. I still prefer the original. This is a big series. Langrisser in Japan, we got it as Warsong, and then eventually we got it as Langrisser. Now, this game came out in 1992. I did not play it till 1995 when I visited my favorite anime store run by my friend William Chow, the king of smuts, and he had this game for rent. And I'm like, oh my god, it was a big resurgence for me for like Macross, with Macross Plus was out, Macross 7 was out, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, a PC Engine game? With Macross, and this is Macross Eternal Love Story. And this was so awesome. I love the redesigned flight suits by Mikimoto for this game, and I just love the strategy of it. I loved using my Valkyrie fighters fighting against the Zentradi and the Meltradi in this game, while Minmay sings in the background at certain times on certain levels. Minmay attack. But I played through a lot of this game in full Japanese, and I'd learned something playing the other strategy games that I played. I understood how everything kind of worked. You'd move your character around, attack, and then end the turn. So I was like, okay, so I just had to learn what some of my attacks were and all of that. And just that I could navigate the menus. Even in 1995, I was able to figure it out. And this is a beloved one for me. It really is. It just captures that time period and where I was at. And I was experimenting with some different strategy games, but they made it for me, I swear to God. Macross Eternal Love Story on PC Engine. Of course, I love me some Macross. 1997 was a huge deal year for strategy games. We got a couple of really good ones on PS1, but we start off with a legendary one that will go down in history, and one that severely needs a remake, and that is for Final Fantasy Tactics. Right here, I remember the lead up to this game, seeing it in video game magazines going, oh my god, you get to control black mages, and it's a strategy game, and there's chocobos in it, and it looked incredible. And then you start to play the game, and it was in depth, man. This game actually had so much challenge to it, but I loved it. I fell in love with it. And I remember Rob coming over, watching me play it, saying, I don't know how you have the patience for it. And I made the patience for it. This is a legendary game. What do you guys think of Final Fantasy Tactics? Let me know. What a game. 1997 I look back on very, very fondly, because every single game that was coming to the PS1 was an absolute gem of a game. Every game that was coming out was firing on full cylinders by every company, Capcom, Konami, no matter who it was, Square. Every game back then was legendary. And then we got a beautiful little strategy game from Konami, Bandal Hearts. Now, this one is kind of lost in the history books a little bit, but for all of us who were there, we really loved this game. And I originally rented it back in the day and played it quite a bit, and then years later, I was able to get my copy of it. It's a fairly standard strategy game. You'll look at it now and go, well, that looks kind of ordinary, but you have to go back to 1997. We didn't have tons of these games. And when these launched on PS1, with Tactics, and then this was a real era of, discovery and really diving into strategy games and really enjoying the PS1. You had the best shooters, the best RPGs, and some of the best strategy games. I had a lot of fun with Bandal Hearts. Had to be on the list. Now let's go back in the Wayback Machine, all the way back to 2001. I can't believe it's like 23 years ago. It makes me feel old. It does. It does make me feel old, because I got a Game Boy Advance, and I was so excited to get this game, Advance Wars. This was the accumulation of all my excitement for strategy games over the years pushed onto the Game Boy Advance. It had everything I liked. It had tanks, it had anime characters. It was very cutesy, but yet had a lot of great strategy to it. I bought this game day one. And then after that, I got addicted to all the rest of the games. I had to get all the rest of the games in the series. And it kind of brought me back to military madness in a way. And I really loved the idea of using tanks again and things like that. I loved it. And then we were so lucky to get Advance Wars 1 and 2 reboots right here for the Nintendo Switch. And I played quite a lot of that game. There's nostalgia there for some of the old music and stuff from the original, which I really enjoyed. I remember playing my Game Boy Advance back in the day going, my God, does it get better than this? And yeah, it did. On the Nintendo Switch, they did a really great remake of the original game, honoring it. And yes, you have your beautiful cutesy graphics, and you have your great anime characters doing their crazy movesets in the game. I loved it. And this is a game that I remember playing with my friend Swagger. We actually played this together. And I remember we were stalemating each other like so much. It was like ridiculous. I remember some of our battles went on for way too long. I think we got it wrong back in the day and all of that. But a lot of time spent playing Advance Wars. High recommendation. If you've never played a strategy game, it's a great place to jump in and have a great tutorial system in the beginning. So in 1995, my friend Andrew came over with a game doctor, and he introduced me to this game, Front Mission, on the Super Famicom. It never came out over here on the Super Nintendo, unfortunately. And this again is Squaresoft at the time, firing on all cylinders, as I was talking about earlier. They were just launching incredible brand new franchises. And Front Mission had everything I loved at the time. Beautiful character designs, great mecha, great strategy. So I was loving Front Mission, but it never came out here until the DS. They brought it out on the DS. I picked it up, played it on there. And then finally on the Nintendo Switch, we get a full remake of the game. And I couldn't have been happier to see that original game. And you can switch between the old music and the new music. I loved it. And I love Front Mission. I always have it. Yes, again, nostalgia, but you had to see what it looked like back on the Super Famicom back in the day. We were like, whoa, look at these graphics. Does life get any better? And as I say, it does get better. You know, when we got the remake, which I thought was really great. I know a lot of people didn't care for the remake. I thought it was great. I'm just a big Front Mission fan in general. Okay, my last 3 games here. Of course, you cannot mention strategy games on consoles and not mention Fire Emblem. And I'm not forgetting, I'm just going to show Fire Emblem Engage. I played this last year and I loved it. Yes, Path of Radiance is my favorite in the series, but I fell in love with Engage. Beautiful graphics, great animation. I love the storyline. I love all the character designs. I know a lot of people were arguing back then. I don't like the blue and red hair. I was like, man, I'm from the old school days of anime. I think it's totally fine and fitting. But I think in general, you can jump into the Fire Emblem series anywhere you want, from the first few games to like Three Hopes to this.
Engage with emblems!
Into the 3DS games. There's so many ways to jump into this series in general. And I'm not gonna pick one. I said Fire Emblem Engage. That's a great game, but you can't go wrong with the entire series. Find your jumping in spot and start Fire Emblem for sure.
I hope you're hungry for fun!
Now, the year 2022 kind of reminds me of the year 1997 because we got a couple of strategy games that kind of came out of nowhere and I believe are classics now. And we're going to start with one of them, Triangle Strategy. This kind of came out of nowhere, and at first I was just like, oh, it kind of looks generic, it doesn't look that good, maybe it's okay. And then I got into the story of all the different continents fighting, got into the characters, and then I got into the gameplay, the strategy of it. And I gotta say, I fell in love. And the more and more you play this game, the better it gets. And I was so moved by this game and the characters that I had to buy the art book for this game. I actually had to do that. And the art book is fantastic. I recommend it for anybody who's a fan of the game. But this game will be remembered as a classic on the Nintendo Switch. It's so absolutely fantastic.
The flames consume you!
And yes, I'm gonna bring up this game here, the Defi Chronicles. Everybody panned on this game, everybody passed this game. I gave my first thoughts on the game. and I got quite a bit into the game as well. And what I liked about it, it was a great RTS game, and I hadn't played a lot of those. Yes, I played the Pikmin series, and yes, the Pikmin series needs to be mentioned as well. That's another great strategy game that I absolutely adore, and it should be in this list. It should be, absolutely. The Defi Chronicles was fascinating because I really had never played a medieval RTS before. Go figure, after all of the years, you kind of see my progression through all these. And I started playing it, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was a really, really solid game. Yes, it's not a AAA game, but then again, was Bandal Hearts a AAA game when it came out? No. Was it a great game? Yes. Does it hold up? Sure. And the Defi Chronicles, in my mind, will always hold up. And I had a great amount of fun playing the game, strategizing, moving my troops all at the same time. It was mass hysteria, and I loved it. Guys, those are some of the strategy games that I've been playing over the years that really stand out to me personally. But let me know down below, what are some of your favorite console strategy games? Let me know down below, because I'd love to play them. I'd love to know about them and all that. These are just some of my picks. I want to hear your picks down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.